A lot of questions on this defensive line, and I am here to answer them with a little bit of help. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. Today on the show, I have a special guest we will get to momentarily. His name is JJ. He's a high school football coach, focuses on D-Line. So I asked him to take a look at the Vikings D-Line, their tape from last year, college tape from their draft picks, and so on. And he is going to help me out with Jonathan Grenard, Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. Really excited to talk to you. So let's get right into it. All right, everybody. I'm here with JJ, the casual NFL fan, regretfully NorCal resident, or should I say Central
Valley? Yeah.
Central Valley. There we go.
I don't want to be associated with NorCal or SoCal.
Okay, well, you're right on one of those counts. JJ is a D-line coach at an area high school, and burgeoning football analyst. You've got a YouTube channel by the same name, and all social media. You can find The Casual NFL Fan, all one word. How are you doing, man? And by the way, you can't see, but he's got a Khalil Mack jersey on, so we're ready to D-line out.
Yeah.
Raiders Khalil Mack. That goes so hard.
Raiders legend.
Yeah.
Doing pretty well. Excited to be on here.
So JJ, for everybody at home, you guys have to know that like a lot of what I have learned about D-Line in the last year or so has come from JJ. JJ has taught me a lot. So I'm really excited to get you on here and just straight from the horse's mouth. You can teach people sort of your philosophy, your ideas on D-Line, and then we can go and talk about some of the Vikings players, which I told you we were doing that and you went and watched them. So thank you for doing that. But first, so you sent me this whole chart about like the categories by which you evaluate D-line. You have these terms like force winner, technical winner, looper, crasher, pocket pusher, all these different things. So I would love to just go through a quick like definition for what kinds of things you're looking at and how you're like dividing the body of work of a defensive lineman. So for like force winner versus technical winner, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so for just a basic overview, everything's divided into two. So you have two types of winning: force winning, technical winning. And I divide it into two types of stunts or roles you're asked to do on the stunt: crashing or looping. And then two types of containing: pushing the pocket or just normal containing. Whereas for winning, for force winning versus technical, it's more about, are you forcing the O lineman into a bad position, or are you more winning off of him making a mistake? So it's two types of.
So you're not talking about like power, right? Like, yeah, I'm thinking like Patrick Jones is a strength power rusher, but that's not necessarily what you mean by force winner. You mean force winner by using, it could even be by using speed to put them into a bad position or something like that. Like where you're sort of on the attack rather than waiting for an opening.
Yeah, like you're just forcing the tackle to either oversay, you're just, bull rushing through him, just any type of way to put him in a bad position to where it could work off of him. Whereas technical winning is more like the hand fighting stuff, more like spins, cross chops, swipes.
Yeah. This is like your Aiden Hutchinson kind of.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Aiden Hutchinson, a technical winner. TJ Watt. Yeah.
Josh Hines Allen, just guys like that.
And then like the force winner, I would think of like Myles Garrett.
Yeah. Even Jonathan Grenard on the Vikings.
For sure.
Guys like Trayvon Walker. For a high level guy, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, just guys like that where maybe technically they're not as proficient or they just do the same couple of moves, but they can just force the O-line into a bad position and just...
It's just so hard to deal with.
Work off of it, yeah. And it's the most important. So when looking at defensive linemen, I care more about force winning than technical winning, just because at some point everyone gets better technically. And it's something that anyone could develop, whereas for force winning, you need a certain amount of traits to do. Like no one could be a Myles Garrett. no one could do what Myles Garrett does, but everyone could learn to cross chop.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because even the way you've defined this, like if you are kind of an opportunistic pass rusher and you're waiting for someone to make a mistake, well, what if that guy doesn't make a mistake on that rep? You just take an L. Whereas a guy like a Myles Garrett has the traits to like, you can play everything perfectly, but I'm still going to get up into you and I'm going to bull rush you down and I'm going to still win that rep. But moving forward, looping and crashing, that's stunts. And could you quickly define for everyone at home what a looper and a crasher is on a stunt? Like explain the 101 like JV how a stunt works.
Yeah, so the Vikings do run a decent amount of stunts. A basic just 2-man stunt is one guy runs into an O lineman in front of a different D lineman, and he's either trying to get that O lineman's attention or just run right into him, just knock him off balance. And then the D lineman next to him is running around them, or you could say looping around them. And either the guy that's running to that lineman is going to get free, or the guy looping around might be the one to get free.
So what makes a good crasher?
For a crasher, it's a mix of just being explosive, being just physical, strong, could be big, have a violent mentality. Because you can see someone with the traits to do it, but they might not have the mentality or just that dog in them just to run through a guy. So you kind of need that
a little crazy. You want your D-line a little psycho, yeah.
Like Bernard's good at crashing. Like he just wants to run into dudes. But someone like, say, Max Crosby, like he can be a good crasher based off of his traits, but he just doesn't all the time. So you kind of just need that as well. And for looping...
a couple of really high-profile moments of crashing were actually Blake Cashman last year, crashing through and doing it so much that he actually opened up a gap for himself, or at the very least, hugely influenced the angles of the line for the looper, which
he just runs around the crasher and tries to find an opening, or loops a contain, which, two ways to run stunts. You're either trying to run a stunt to get pressure, or it could be running a stunt just to contain or end up containing. And so for the looper, you kind of need to be a bit more, same thing, you need speed. You need to be a bit more agile because you're going to be working in traffic sometimes, and you have to just run very tightly, use less steps, no wasted movement. Because another main thing about running around a guy and trying to find an opening, you just can't waste movement. If you run too wide, then you're just going to take yourself out of the pass rush and just waste some time and all that.
Yeah, and this is something that Andrew Van Ginkel has gotten a lot of production over the years doing, and plenty in Minnesota as well. So what's the difference between just being a contain guy and your like pocket pusher thing?
So for pocket pushing, you could think of like Grenard uses it a lot, even Dallas Turner a few times, where you're using power to push the pocket. You're trying to move the O-lineman back, but your goal is not to win. It's a slightly different thing versus using power to win versus to contain, because you're more focusing on driving the O-lineman back, getting extension, having your eyes on the QB. So the QB tries to roll out, you can just shut off and chase after him, or just push the O-lineman to the QB. So if you have another guy that's trying to win, well, now the QB can't escape, and he's going to
chewing up space,
maybe work towards the guy that's trying to win and all that. And then for regular containing, this is something that DTs can be good at, and nose tackles, where you're not really trying to get a rush. You're not really trying to push the pocket. You're more just eyeing the QB, trying to mirror him. So in a pass rush, you could just kind of say, like, see guys who aren't rushing, and it's not that they're doing nothing. They can have a different type of goal. So for some DTs, you'll see them just stand there and not really try to get a rush in. But what they're doing is they're watching the QB's eyes and just mirroring them. So on, say, 1st and 10 or any short yardage situation where you might have a quick game, instead of getting a rush in and opening up a lane in the middle of the field, you just stand there, eye the QB. He's in a throwing motion, get your hands up, knock the ball down. Or if he's like looking towards you, you just follow where the QB's at, so that way you could try to knock the ball down. And if there's, say, a guy that's trying to win a one-on-one, and let's say Andrew Van Ginkel, he rushes outside super hard and there's a huge gap, could he work towards that area, that vacated space? Or say Jonathan Grenard, who uses spins a lot. If he spins inside and now there's a gap outside, could he work back outside to keep the QB in the pocket? And there's some players who aren't good at that yet, or they get caught up with the O-line and the QB could just run around them and find open space or open
So
throwing lanes.
you've identified like Taki Taimani as somebody who gets a little caught up there, can't maybe get across the face and get out to the quarterback in time. I remember talking to you about a few of the guys in the draft, and from that context of like, you know, there like a lot of big runs going right by the guy, right through their like responsible gap. And this is where there are a couple other like main things that I want to kind of go over with you, because I love the way that you describe pass rushes to people, like how a pass rush is constructed. I love it. So I want to get into that with you, as well as, of course, some of the Vikings D linemen that we want to hear about: Dallas Turner, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, who you watched as well, Grenard Van Ginkel, and everybody. We'll get into all of that next here on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. If you have ever looked at your bank account and then been like, uh-oh, what happened? Look, sometimes online shopping can get away from us, or just ordering out can get away from us, or whatever. It's easy to lose track of your money. Monarch Money helps you avoid that problem. It's your whole personal CFO. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. All of those other things you might have other apps for, all in one place. You can track your investments. You can collaborate on joint accounts if that's your situation, and avoid all the confusion that way. Not to mention tracking spending, figuring out where you could possibly cut back, and budgeting smarter. You're not juggling a whole bunch of apps. You can even plan long-term goals and manage wealth building. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. Keeping it going here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. I'm talking to somebody who knows better than me, high school D-line coach here, about some D-line stuff. So you've described this to me a bunch of times, so I want the people to hear it. The way that you describe the construction of like a typical four-man pass rush, with, you know, the decisions about who makes what you mean when you say two-way go. And how you sort of differentiate one edge rusher from another. I would love to hear your spiel.
Okay. So if it's a passing situation where you're trying to, hey, let's get a pass rush going, and we have a guy that can win one-on-ones or two-way goes, you set up a pass rush for that guy just to win.
Yeah.
So
and what is a two-way go?
So a two-way go, it just means you and the offensive tackle, you could work outside, you could work inside, or you could go through him.
Yes. And so if I don't have a two-way go, that means that I have a gap that I need to rush through, and I'm not allowed, because of the construction of the pass rush, I'm not allowed to get across that guy's face and get into the other gap, because I'm going to get in someone's way.
Yeah, so everyone else who doesn't have that two-way go, they have a responsibility or a job or a role, however you want to say it, where you're containing, running a stump, pushing the pocket, doing something else besides winning as your main goal. Whereas a guy, let's say the edge rusher, whose main goal is to win, his job is just focusing on winning. He doesn't have to worry about contain, doesn't have to worry about, you know, what gap do I choose? I have to work just one gap. He can just work anyway, just win.
Yeah, so Aiden Hutchinson is the guy I think of for this, because the entire Lions D-line plan before Hutchinson went down was essentially everyone rush away from Aiden Hutchinson and give him, like, put him on an island with a tackle and let him cook. And that's a two-way go. So how do you make the choice of what everybody else, which assignment you're giving to everybody?
It just depends on how you line up and maybe what the offensive weaknesses are. Like, you could kind of see with the younger O linemen where teams may run a lot more stunts, especially on the backside. So with your guy who's getting a two-way go, maybe the other side's running a stunt and trying to mix up the young O lineman who can't pass it off that well. Or if it's like a weaker O line, which you used to see a lot with the Vikings, especially last year, where teams would just push the pocket and just try to run through them, bull rush them to force the QB to stay in the pocket where someone else could just win off the edge. Or you just have guys just standing there, just containing, focusing on, hey, our guy's going to work inside, outside, whichever way he goes, the guy next to him, the D team, is going to fill the space that he leaves. So if he works too far outside, he starts working in that gap. So the QB can't just run out. If he works inside, same thing. He gets outside of him.
So let's jump into some of these names, shall we? So this sort of data set that you've given me, I'll overlay it here if I'm allowed to, if you'll let me. If not, we can just be descriptive. It's okay. I mean, it's mostly podcast listeners anyway, so we'll have to be descriptive anyways. But for example, you have each player, like you've given them a color from green, which is good, all the way down to red, which is bad, in all of these categories. So for Jonathan Grenard, you've given him green in a bunch of categories, maybe a couple yellows, and then you go all the way down to undrafted free agent Jonathan Harris, who's got a bunch of red, a bunch of orange. So for Jonathan Grenard, you have identified him as a force winner, like we talked about, as a good crasher, as a good pocket pusher, and it is painting this picture of this extremely powerful, forceful defensive lineman, but not necessarily the guy doing a lot of wax on, wax off to win.
Yeah, so when watching him, he's able just to run around guys, and guys don't really expect them to be more of or try to win outside. They expect him to use more power. So he uses that just to, let's say, trick some O-lineman to where he's like, all right, I'm just going to run around you, just rip through him.
Yeah,
or
speed to power.
Bull rush through a guy like Taylor Decker, Packers offensive tackles, just run through him, get a sack.
That was a backup, yeah.
Sometimes he'll spin a lot, which I'm not a huge fan of. So the reason why he's not as good of a technical winner is because sometimes his pass rush move choices are not what they should be. Like he does spin a lot, way more than I'd like.
That is like this weird, there's this like instinct where when you feel like you're getting beat, like when you went upfield, you tried to speed rush, right? And they just stayed with you, and they've gotten, to the upfield kind of landmark before you did. And there's this weird, like it worked a lot for you when you were young, so you're just going to do it where you just want to spin back inside, and it's like all you ever do. I think that, like, Aiden Hutchinson again is like a big culprit of this, and it leads to some pretty ugly L's on him, like some big highlights on the O-line's tape that says, look what I got to do to Aiden Hutchinson, Pro Bowler. But I'm with you. I can't stand the improvised spin move. I think there can be, you could be Dwight Freeney, right? And it can be your plan where you're going to, attack a certain shoulder, subvert the other way. But like as an improvised move, it just kind of feels like, please hit my kidneys. You're just begging for it. So you've similarly, or not similar, kind of conversely, you've identified Andrew Van Ginkel as more of a technical winner. He should be the looper, while Grenard should be the crasher. If you're going to have these two stunt together, he's better at contain and at, of course, at dropping, right? We got the pick sixes and stuff. Yeah. So he is maybe not as forceful of a player and maybe not as much of an athlete purely as Grenard, but has his own tools to win. And I think these two guys are a pretty interesting contrast because they're truly, two ways to skin a cat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're like two just opposite type of players, but still both really good at everything they do. And with Van Ginkel, like a lot of his main issues is just being small. Like he's really fast, but he's not that like 99 percentile athlete could just blow past guys. Like, yeah, he could beat some slower footed tackles just by being faster than them. And another main thing too is he's not the strongest player. So if an offensive tackle gets a decent enough punch, or if he's beating a guy, but he's able just to get a slight contact on Ginkel, he could just push Ginkel outside the arc of the pass rush or outside the path to the QB. And there's some moments like that where like Ginkel's in a winning position, but he can't finish because the tackle could just get a slight push.
Yeah, I think Penny Sewell got him on that a few times.
Yeah, and it's kind of why he has to be more of a technical winner and win with hand fighting or cross chops. I think he beat Zach Tom with the cross chop in one game, and just stuff like that where he has to knock hands away to avoid that contact.
Yeah, I refer to this as like there are guys who go around and guys who go through. And I don't just mean like go through like just being a power rusher, but I mean guys that just sort of you occupy that space and I'm going to prevent so much of a problem for you that I'm going to be able to get through that space, versus guys that say you're occupying that space, but my plan is to go somewhere else and you're too slow to get to me, or you can't get your hands on me, or I'm going to use technique to get around you. It's funny. I was watching. I've been sort of picking at Tyrion Ingram Dawkins for an eventual Patreon video that'll come up. I don't know, someday this year. And of course, Chaz Chambliss, a undrafted rookie for the Vikings, is also on that team. And you talk about like a technical winner who is simply too small. It's the most extreme example, and to a point where, like, I think you can learn something from this. You can very much tell why he didn't get drafted. Where like he'll try to do that sort of two-hand swipe or cross chop kind of move, and the second a tackle gets his hand into his chest plate, the guy bounces off like he's a rubber band ball. And suddenly the angle is totally screwed. He's lost all his momentum. And it's just like, oh, there's just not physically enough mass. You did everything right, but you simply just need to have a couple of anchors in your pockets for that to work. And that happens to Van Ginkel a little bit. I think it happens to Dallas Turner some as well. And I do want to get your thoughts on a couple of those young guys, as well as some of the guys in the interior next here on Locked On Vikings. All right, JJ, keeping it rolling here with a casual NFL fan on social media and YouTube. You can find what I'll refer to as a manifesto on Shamar Stewart pre-draft. It's like 4 hours long of like tape breakdown if you really just want to microwave your brain on that. But let's talk about, let's stick with some of the fun. So the other guy, the guy on the interior that you seem most excited about is Jonathan Allen. As a similar skill set to Jonathan Grenard. So can you tell me what sets Jonathan Allen apart from the rest of his 2025 teammates?
Yeah, so Jonathan Allen, DT, coming from Washington. He's also one of those just more forceful winner. So a lot of what he likes to do when he's pass rushing is use a hump move a lot, which the old school Reggie White, just get underneath the O-lineman's shoulder pads, just toss him over. He loves
bring your hips. That's why they call it the hump move, because you want to like, this is something that is like really foundational that probably doesn't get talked about a lot in like NFL media, is like how you have to kind of bring your hips in a hump, in the same way that if you ever watch somebody like clean and jerk, or if you ever look at any martial arts where you want to bring your hips into a punch because that's where it is, or any torque based sport like baseball, golf, being a quarterback, where you want to bring all your power is there in the hips. And when you brought your hips forward, it means that the strongest muscles on your body are now involved. And that's why that worked for Reggie White and for Jonathan Allen.
Yeah. And like a lot of movements are based off in your hips. But with him, it's like he tries to attack the outside shoulder extremely hard, where he's working upfield, and he can hit you with a double swipe or swipes, which he might miss a few times, or just hit you with his hump move. And sometimes the hump move doesn't work, but because he's just big, stronger than you, even if he's in a bad position where he's caught up, he'll just bull rush you into the QB or just run you into the QB. And for him, I think the Vikings got him based off of his Lions game in the playoffs, because that game he looked really good.
That was a good one. Yeah. The Vikings do like to operate with like injured players, assuming they're going to like get some form back. So that was probably a big deal to see him kind of come off that injury and prove that he was still that guy. But there was, it was still to me pretty night and day. If you watch like week one, with just the amount of consistency, the amount of like knockback and force that he had, still wasn't quite the same. He just had a bunch of like good reps overcoming that. But let's talk a little bit more about the young guys. You're not as high on these guys. So first let's talk about Dallas Turner. He, big hot button issue. Everybody wants to know, is Dallas Turner going to be okay? Is he a bust? Can we write him off? There's like this huge range of how good Dallas Turner could have been last year, and we wouldn't know because he was buried behind Grenard and Van Ginkel. So even if he was like pretty good, he still probably wouldn't have played that much, but also but look, you've seen enough of him and you can maybe just come to a conclusion here. So broadly, I ask, how is Dallas Turner?
Right now, he's okay.
Okay.
That's the short answer.
Short answer. Sure.
It's kind of
well.
weird.
Tell me the nature of this guy's game, because it's difficult to nail down, especially because he didn't really get in a lot until like the back half of the season.
So he's kind of more of a speed of power guy, and it's a bit weird because he's almost in between what Ginko and Grenard is. Like he's just like right in the middle of their
You mean
skill
like size
sets.
wise?
Just like overall, like how he plays, because
Oh, I
Bernard's
see.
more of a
Okay.
power guy. He's a speed of power guy. And then Ginkle's more of a speed guy, and he's can be a bit of a speed guy, but not to that extent right now. So it's a bit weird to where it's hard to get him snaps because if you want a power guy, you have Grenard. If you want a speed guy, you have Ginkle. So it was a little hard because of that. But coming from Bama or Georgia, it's the same college. They kind of teach their edges to do the same thing, where they're taught how to contain, run stunts, blitz, drop in coverage, do all that stuff. And pass rushing, all they know is basically just a stab forklift, which is more of a power move. And he can do some of that stuff, but it's not as consistent when you're going against NFL tackles.
So what would you want to see from Dallas Turner for him to take that next step in those sort of straight up one-on-one situations? Let's say, God forbid, somebody up front gets hurt, Grenard or Van Ginkel gets hurt, and Dallas Turner becomes an every down player. What do we need to see before we start giving him the two-way go?
Just more consistent hand fighting. That's the main thing. Because he's not really going to be a true high-end force winner, where he's not going to be big enough to run through contact.
He just doesn't have the bulk.
Can't afford to miss. He can run around guys, and he's a bit flexible, and he's a bit bigger than Ginkle, so it won't be to the same extent of him if he misses and the O-line's able to get some contact on him. He might be able just to, you could say, force his way to the QB and just run around that fast enough. But just to get more one-on-ones, get more consistent wins, he just needs to get better hand fighting.
So let's move elsewhere in the SEC. And well, I've got one little question at the end here, but let's rip off the Band-Aid. So you were talking to me about Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. You're not a huge fan. This is a 5th round pick. Somebody that I liked a good bit when I saw him watching O-lines going against Georgia. I kept noticing, this 93 guy keeps making some plays. And I'm fleshing that take out, and I've found plenty of positives and negatives and stuff. But I'll hold those close to the chest for now and let you take the floor. What do you see with Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins at the next level?
So I know he had a huge, like, high RAS and like the 9 something.
Yeah, we don't care about that. Here, talk about how he plays. I know you. We don't care about. We're not measuring.
I'm just gonna say he doesn't really show up on film. Like, he's a good athlete.
Okay.
And
yeah, you know what? I kind of see that. Yeah.
And Georgia trusted him on pass rushing downs. Like, he was used on a lot of pass rushing downs. He's a bit of a weird hybrid. Like, I think you've mentioned that he could be like a Jihad Ward replacement. I think he could eventually be something like that, as like the hybrid inside out player on early downs. That seems to
be what they're doing with him right now. Like, they are using him as a Jihad Ward replacement. He looks like he's going to get reps.
That's interesting. Because like on early
tell him how you really feel.
I don't mean the bad way. But like on early downs,
let him rip, baby, let him rip.
There's like a few like issues. Like, I don't think he's that bad of a player. I think he can end up being a solid player like pretty soonish, like a couple of years. He just has a lot of like minor issues that has to be worked out. Maybe it could be worked out within a year. Maybe it takes a couple of years before he can be like that Jihad Ward replacement. There's a lot of minor things like hand fighting wise, it's missing consistently. In college, they don't really teach you to use power to win. They teach you to use power to contain. So you just see him just like place his hands on guys, but not try to drive them back when he should be more of a power guy at the next level. And even in run defense, he's catching blocks a lot. And it kind of inhibits him from making plays and from, you see guys like running in gaps next to him because he's caught up, where he's not getting that extension or getting that knockback. He's just holding them tightly. But towards the second half of the season, you can see a bit more consistency, like Texas games and all that, where he is getting more of that knockback, more shedding better. But I mean, we'll see how it looks against NFL players.
Yeah, there's like a sort of like a downstream effect when you don't set up right and you don't get control of that guy's upper body. Like, if he has control of your upper body, you're just never going to be able to shed that block. Like, I was just looking at watching a clinic, but I was just looking at one from Coastal Carolina and all the stuff that they've taught, and they've had a lot of success at their level. And it's all they say they don't teach block, they teach lift. Like, you grab and you lift, because if you get control of that guy's upper body, you're just never gonna, like, they're never ever going to influence you, and they're not going to be able to rip down and shed like the way they want to, or club and swim or rip, or they're not going to be able to do anything that they want to do if they don't have that like base of power to work from. You can take that away from them. That does happen to Tyrion Ingram Dawkins some. So I'll ask the same question. What singular thing would you want to see from him for you to sort of change your tune and say, oh, okay, yeah, this guy is going to be like a positive contributor at the next level?
The main thing is just early down stuff. That's usually how you get snaps. Like, I think right now you could use them on stunts and have them on passing downs, especially in like just like spot snaps, or if someone's a bit tired, you can just throw them out there and be fine with him. But just more early down stuff, just for him to get those snaps, especially if he has to play inside or bump down in odd fronts. I'd be a little worried because he's a smaller player. So you need to make up for it with better technique. So just getting more knockback, just shooting your hips through, which is something else, because he'll like catch the blocks, but not drive it back or shoot his hips through like a power clean motion or squatting upward motion. So he doesn't have a lot of power, but it's not because he's weak. It's just more technical stuff. So he could fix that, get more early down snaps, then he could be a pretty decent contributor.
So I've got one more question for you before I let you go. Thank you so much for all this time. Of all the other players that we haven't mentioned here that are like lower roster level players, so don't say Javon Hargraves. Say, your Bo Richters, your Gabriel Murphys, your Taki Taimanis and Jalen Redmonds. Who do you think has the best chance to be a true blue positive contributor of these sort of, these second or third team type of guys?
I'm just a huge fan of nose tackle, so Taki Taimani. I have no idea where he came from, but he's fun to watch.
Washington, Oregon, and then he transferred to Washington. It was a big betrayal.
Because when watching him, I sometimes him and Harrison Phillips will wear long sleeves, and there's a few times where I'm like, oh, look at Harrison Phillips making a play like usual, and I'm like, wait, that's 94. I'm like, okay, like he just moves really well for a nose tackle. Like he can run stunts and do some looping and crashing, all that stuff, and it looks fun. Just seeing a nose tackle who could scoot.
Yeah, I love that. That's what got me so head over heels for Kenneth Grant this year. Which I know I'm not alone in that, but yeah, it's a bummer that he got hurt. But Jalen Redmond actually came in and did a decent job. So I actually think that interior line, who gets the reps, who makes the team, is going to be this really interesting idea. Plus, there's a draft pick. So Jalen Redmond is a UFL rescue, and Taki Taimani is an undrafted second-year player. But you got a second-year draft pick in Levi Drake Rodriguez, who's buried behind those guys and didn't show a lot. I mean, he had one pretty good preseason game. That was kind of it. So add Tyrion Ingram Dawkins to this, which one thing I'll say, I can say pretty definitively is do not put that guy at edge rusher. I don't see the hybrid in him. That guy needs to be on the inside, because if you're trying to ask him to like win up around the edge, absolutely freaking not. Those are the worst reps. So if you kind of have to put him on the interior as well, suddenly you've got 7 feasibly rosterable guys. So somebody reasonable is getting cut there. There's probably some waiver claim worthy guys. JJ, thank you so much for your time, man. And thank you so much for all the time, all the other time behind the scenes that what you have told me has basically become what happens on this podcast. So I owe you a lot of credit and a lot of thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.